and welcome everyone. We're happy to have you here today for our webinar series. You all know Andrew Hunter. I mean, he's been a consultant for many years. We go way, way back. And he also represents Kikkoman. And Kikkoman, of course, is one of our sponsors. So we're really happy to have them as a sponsor and for them to bring Andrew to us to be able to share this really, trend-setting technique that I think is absolutely cool. So Andrew, you're on.
I'm going to talk today about two emerging trends that we at Kikkoman are especially interested in and excited about. The first one is fat washing, and we're going to actually have a demonstration. Then we're going to talk about something called wafu. In its simplest form is the Japanese sensibility imparted on other cuisines, principally Italian, but there's wafu happening in Peru and even in Scandinavia. In its simplest form, fat washing is imparting the flavor of butter into a liquid that otherwise doesn't have fat. It works really well with liquids like bourbon and soy sauce that have some sharp edges to them. So what you're doing is you're flattening those edges out, you're making it more kind of voluptuous, if you will, and you're giving layers of flavor to create complexity. So you can do it with just regular straight butter, or you can infuse your butter to further create complexity of flavor. So on the left here with the tarragon, I have butter that I've browned, and we'll talk a little bit about the Maillard reaction and how that's important also. But I've browned the butter with ginger, fresh garlic, and tarragon. The licoricey notes work really well with Asian food, and so I like it. So the first step of fat washing is to create this butter that's loaded with all kinds of infused flavors. But the second step is to have soy sauce that's hot. I especially like the citrus seasoned ponzu because I think that it has the citrus notes that also create complexity. And ponzu, we have a citrus seasoned, which is orange and lemon, and we have a lime. And those are the lowest sodium soy sauces that we have as well. But the first step is pour it into the soy sauce, heat up the ponzu and the butter mixture together to get it to infuse. The butter is already infused with garlic and ginger and tarragon. Now I'm infusing the ponzu with that same mixture. And then once it's hot and you think that it's infused, you can then strain it. And as the mixture cools, the butter floats to the top and creates a raft. I can cut out a section of this raft. So I've basically drilled a hole in the butter and save that. And then again, I would strain it. Now I have fat wash ponzu. We're going to talk about some different things that we can do with it. I have fat washed ponzu, and I have this raft of butter. You need a fat that has some water in it. And the scientific word for that is polarity. Not like magnets, but polarity of the liquids. And if you try to fat wash with just olive oil, it doesn't work. Or any kind of oil for that matter, because there's no liquid or no water in the oil. You have to have water in the fat. And so schmaltz, which is chicken fat, duck fat works really well. Of course, butter works well. And all of those animal fats, beef tallow as well, you might want to infuse those fats to give some more complexity.
And now for our classic butter sauce, the beurre blanc. In a stainless steel saucepan, combine the shallots, Kikkoman rice vinegar, sake, and heavy cream. Cook over medium-high heat and bring to a simmer. Reduce the liquid to about 2 tablespoons. Turn off the heat and allow the reduction to cool for a few minutes. Remove the prepped butter cubes from the refrigerator. Adding 1 butter cube at a time, whisk into the reduction. As the butter melts and incorporates into the reduction, continue whisking in butter cubes. If the butter stops melting, turn the heat to low and continue whisking until all the butter is incorporated. Here you have it. Spoon the beurre blanc and fat wash ponzu sauce over roasted halibut or your favorite fish and garnish with fresh herbs of choice.
So fat washing is melting butter into a liquid to create a softer, supple mouthfeel, or the kokumi effect. But if you can imagine tasting soy sauce and tasting tamari, tamari has a softer, more kind of velvety mouthfeel, and that's this kokumi effect, and it goes to a molecular level. Next slide is about cocktails. That's really the inspiration. It works really well in old fashions.
The idea of the fat washing that's come on really soon, I was talking, fat is what holds the flavor, right? When we're smoking things on the smoker, the smoke flavor really gets into the fat. That's the biggest thing. If you have something that's really dry, it's not gonna hold as much of that flavor. So we'll take that smoky fat, we'll render that off, we separate it, you mix that with a bourbon, and you let it sit at room temp for a few hours, and that smoke, that fat has that smoke flavor, and those, flavonoids and chemicals that are in there are gonna be getting into the whiskey. So we let it sit, and then we'll just freeze it. All that fat separates off, pull the main chunk off, and then you strain it through a cheesecloth, and then you get this this bourbon that has the fire, the smoke, the pork fat kind of essence to it, which goes really well with bourbon, which naturally goes in toasted barrels and stuff like that. So that's the concept of how we're doing that. It's really special because we're using the fat from our pigs and the live fire. There's a lot of crazy fat washing stuff going on now. Like people are washing liquor with cheese and all kinds of other crazy stuff.
So he said a couple of things that I think are interesting. He talked about freezing. With the soy sauce, you just have to put it in the fridge because the butter will rise to the top. With bourbon or another spirit, you need to put it into the freezer so that the same thing happens. And the other thing that he said was interesting was they use the fat from their pigs, which I think is super cool. They render it. And the reason that works, just like butter or duck fat or chicken fat, is because there's still water in the pork fat. The Maillard reaction, the interaction between the amino acids and the carbohydrates under high heat. And so you don't have to brown the butter for fat washing, but it just creates more complexity of flavor. You can see the green tint, and that's the herbs. Again, I like to use tarragon, but you can use any herb that's appropriate for your finished flavor profile. Certainly cilantro would work, parsley, basil would be beautiful. So any of those fresh herbs, it's really the essential oils that you're extracting from the herb and putting into the butter. One of the things that I often do is take a little xanthan gum and blend it into the ponzu to give it a little bit more viscosity. When I make those, when they come out, I drizzle them with fat washed ponzu, and then I crisp them on the bottom with the butter to make sort of a pot sticker shumai that I harvested. And the butter that I harvested today is the one from the ponzu, from the Coterie Mirin. So this purple kind of look modeling to the butter is the Luxardo cherries. So this was a dish that I made with not too long ago, actually up at the Culinary Institute of America, and it's a seared piece of sea bass, and I'm putting a butter sauce, or I'm napping a butter sauce over the top of the fish, which you can see there, and then drizzling the ponzu around the edges. And in this case, I think I've just dropped a little bit of chervil on top for garnish. This is a QR code for a recipe, but take the recipe for what it's worth. As you guys do, I look at recipes as guides, it's inspiration. So I wanted to talk about wafu, which I define as the proliferation of Japanese culinary sensibility and its influence around the world. The world loves Japanese food. I think we love what we think is classic Japanese. So wafu is in the style of Japanese, and it can be applied to a wide range of applications. And it's not just food; it's animation, it's design, furniture design. Itameshi is the synthesis of wafu, where Japanese meets Italian. And this itameshi concept started organically in Japan. This chef is fascinating to me. His name is Mori Sako. He's of Malayan and Senegalese heritage, but he's French. He was born in France. He grew up in France, and he's a Michelin-starred chef. And he's taking his traditional Malayan foods that he grew up with, using chilies and different flavors, herbs, etc., that are unique. The rice balls in this case are actually made with potatoes, and so again, using something that's unique to Peru, but in a Japanese format.
In the wafu, I've got to ask you, it's kind of interesting. I don't know that it's more about the plating or the ingredients or a combination of the two, or you could do one or the other. I guess there's no rules, right?
I don't think there are any rules. I think a lot of us are chefs. I certainly am, because we didn't particularly like the rules anyway, whether they were on the playground or in English class or wherever those rules were. And so I think that you can pretty much do what you want. I think I could quickly get into this idea of authenticity, which I think is a hot button subject these days. But I think that if you do whatever you're creating, if you do it thoughtfully with some research and integrity, both in terms of your method and ingredients, I think that you're going to come out with something that's really terrific. But I do think, because flavor is really about eating with your senses, or eating with our senses. And so we see things, we smell things, food, and then, the very last sense that we really eat with or enjoy food with is our taste. And so absolutely, Kevin, to your question, use the visual, use textures, use ingredients, all to create this really amazing and delicious food that sets you apart from your competition.